A judge banned San Francisco from clearing most homeless camps as a lawsuit moves ahead. You got London Breed basically just trying to sweep the city, just trying to do what she can, trying to get some traction going. And this is one time where I agree with what the city is doing, and yet we're getting pushback from a bunch of housing advocates, right? Who indicate until we have adequate housing for everybody, this problem's never going to be solved. My issue with this is that the people are homeless because they're addicted to drugs. And that's how this goes. So no matter how much housing you build, this problem isn't going to go away. You're going to take those same issues you've got living in the tent outside, move those inside, still got the same chaos and whatnot. And we're going to get into it, but so many of the folks living outside, living rough, urban camping, they're not going to take whatever housing is offered to them because they can't abide by those rules. They can't abide by, any kind of governance at all because they're doing crazy stuff and nobody's going to accept that. So we've got this standoff going, right? Where the city's actually trying to clean some things up. They're doing their normal sweeps and you got a lawsuit. Let's jump on into it. Let's see what the deal is. This was a big story. This came out right before Christmas, so I'm a little bit late getting to it. Hope you had a great Christmas. On to New Year, right? We don't talk about the holidays a lot because, they happened and how was your holiday? Did you have a great holiday? Yeah. Judges temporarily banned San Francisco police from clearing most homeless encampments, citing people for sleeping in public, or enforcing several other laws aimed at homeless people, while a federal lawsuit against the city moves forward. U.S. Magistrate Judge Donna Ryu on Friday night granted an emergency order that prohibits the city from removing tents and confiscating the belongings of encampment dwellers. If you were to believe, the words that are thrown out there, property, oftentimes it's stuff left behind. These folks get offer after offer after offer of housing. They don't take it up. These people come in and out of these encampments, fairly quickly. A lot of folks aren't ever tracked. And these folks are on drugs. Let's be honest. These folks are on drugs. They don't want to go wherever the housing is that's offered to them. So she pointed to evidence presented by the group of unhoused people and their advocates who asked for the injunction that San Francisco regularly violated its own policies when clearing encampments. Now, the way that these violations go, you know what? It's complete nonsense. It's complete nonsense. If this were ongoing, and I know this because I've been there when the sweeps have happened. I've watched how that goes. They reach out to these folks and they say, hey, got housing over here. You want to come? And oftentimes they don't. I mean, how many times have we had 50, person homeless encampment, one or two people takes the offer of referral, which means they might spend one night, clean up, whatever, get inside when it's cold. They might do that for one night, but then they got to get back out and score whatever, drugs they're doing to keep themselves going before they go through detox. The group cited many instances where authorities cleared people from encampments without offering adequate access to shelter, which is illegal. I get that. And we're not talking about illegal action. What we're talking about is the way it happens in reality and the way the law is set up oftentimes don't mesh. Because the hardcore reality, which is what all the advocates don't want you to hear about, what they don't want you to talk about, is that, it's wildly different than what comes across in these lawsuits, right? She also pointed to evidence of city officials improperly throwing away or seizing homeless people's belongings, including tents, cell phones, medication, identification, and prosthetic limbs. All right, if you know a sweep is coming to your area and you don't clear your stuff out, that's on you, right? That's on you. So I'd have more sympathy. But again, you are living illegally on the sidewalk somewhere, shooting up, doing whatever it is you're doing. And then the city can't, clean that out. Yeah, that's where things have just gotten wildly unreasonable. She called the city's arguments in its defense wholly unconvincing. And maybe they were. Maybe the city did a terrible job of documenting what this looks like. It sounds like it fell between the cracks in the city, and some employee whose job it was just didn't do their job. The city failed to directly dispute that it cleared people without offering shelter, nor that it did not destroy or improperly seize unhoused people's property, she said. You can't, when you go to a homeless encampment sweep, you can't tell private property from garbage. Period. You can't. You can't do it. You'd be like, somebody will say, that's their whatever. And you'll be like, oh, okay, really? All right. And you've all seen the footage. We've all seen the footage, and you go down the sidewalk and it's just, it's a bunch of tents. It's dozens of tents and just a ton of garbage strewn about, right? Not all, but 99.9% of encampments are that way. Every now and then you'll run across one where, somebody's charging rent, $200 a month, and they're keeping it organized and, they're clearing it out. And yeah, those are few and far between, right? So they rely on declarations of San Francisco employees, she wrote, who generally walk through how the city typically conducts encampment closures without discussing any specific closures or providing supporting data or analysis of the time. So in this case, the one side of the lawsuit, the advocates, they did their job, and the judge is sitting there going, well, I've got to make a ruling on this. The city didn't do their job. The city didn't prove their case, which the city can do. They just didn't. Here we are, right? This is my opinion on how this all went down. At a virtual hearing Thursday, Ryu repeatedly criticized the city for not providing a more detailed rebuttal in its court papers. They didn't provide a great case. They need to get somebody in there that just dials it in and get their case out there and think the city's back in business. They're just doing sweep after sweep. There's no way for a person to voluntarily try to access a shelter bed at this point in San Francisco, Ryu said at a hearing in Oakland on Thursday, referring to the undisputed fact that the city currently does not let homeless people sign up for shelters themselves. They only get into shelter when the city reaches out to them first, which they often do weeks ahead of time. It's not like they just roll in and sweep them out, right? It's not. That's not. And then what you've got is you got a bunch of homeless people that, maybe they're asleep in their tent. They didn't talk to somebody. Maybe they just rolled in there. Maybe they were staying elsewhere. You've got this really fluid situation, and it's hard to track down people. So a lot of this stuff falls between the cracks. And then you've got a city employee or city entity that just, dropped the ball clearly, didn't do what they needed to do. And you got a judge that has to rule on it based on the law. And she's saying, well, you didn't do what you needed to do, convince me. Therefore, I'm putting a stop on these sweeps. The underlying lawsuit was filed in September by 7 unhoused people and the Coalition on Homelessness Advocacy Group in an attempt to stop encampment sweeps and prevent police from enforcing quality of life laws against homeless people. How about quality of life laws that protect the residents? How about quality of life laws that protect the business owners? How about quality of life laws that protect moms and dads who just want to take their kid to the playground without having their infant child take on some fentanyl and go blue? How about that? Yeah. Interesting, right? It's literally one of my podcasts recently. Person had their kid at the park, San Francisco, near the marina. Kid got a hold of some fentanyl from the ground, whatever, powder shaped, however. Kid went blue. Somebody gave him Narcan. Kid comes back to life. And by kid, I mean like a 10-month-old baby, infant, toddler, whatever you want to call him. So the goal of the suit is to force San Francisco to redirect resources from encampment sweeps and instead spend billions of dollars on affordable housing and other resources to permanently solve homelessness. Like I say, you're not going to fix homelessness until you fix the drug addiction. And we are anywhere remotely close to involuntarily putting people into treatment centers, detox, whatever it is, to get them to a position where they're actually able to respond to housing. We're not anywhere remotely close to that because an environment like San Francisco, they're more into harm reduction, which is give them clean needles, it'll work out. And we've all seen how that works, right? We just had the Tenderloin Drug Center closed down after we spent $22 million administering this outdoor drug usage area. And it was basically so that if somebody got a bad batch of fentanyl, at least they'd be in an area where people can administer Narcan and bring them back to life. Some might say, well, what about natural selection? How about we just let that run? Yeah, that's out there too, right? In a statement, Mayor London Breed said the city is already spending significant money on sheltering unhoused people. Yep. The large majority of people city workers encounter during encampment cleanups are refusing services or are already housed. And some are using the encampments for drug dealing, human trafficking, and other illegal activities. Some of them are using the encampments for that. I would have to say the vast majority, but she's a politician, and this is the way she has to kind of couch it in order to not appear to be coming down on the homeless population or the drug-addicted population. She argued the judge ruling hampers her ability to address the homelessness crisis. It does, and that's why you need to have whomever the entity is that puts together your legal paperwork need to do better. We need to reimagine and rethink that person because somebody dropped the ball on a pretty damn big issue, homelessness and sweeps in San Francisco, didn't they? Somebody's ass probably got fired. That's what I would think. And if they didn't, they probably should have. So mayors cannot run cities this way, she said, the judge said. Well, actually they can, and actually that's what they are doing. It's just you didn't get the right answers you wanted to see, and now you're making public statements. Here's what London Breed says. She says, mayors cannot run cities this way. I agree, but you already are. So we already have too few tools to deal with the mental illness we see on the streets. It's not just mental illness. It is, a majority of it is drug addiction. Now we're being told not to use another tool that helps bring people indoors and keeps our neighborhoods safe and clean for our residents, which is homeless encampment sweeps. And these don't happen just willy-nilly. They get posted. Somebody goes out there and contacts people, and they do all this rigmarole that you and I, the taxpayers, pay for. And then eventually they get swept after a multi-week process, right? In a statement, Jen Quart, spokesperson for the city attorney David Chu, disputed the characterization that San Francisco forces people to leave encampments without offering shelter. Well, you didn't really do that in the paperwork in the lawsuit, did you? So it doesn't count. You can say what you want all day long, but unless you've got it in front of the judge when that judge is reading through both sides, it doesn't count. So Zaya Schroff, lead attorney for the case with the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights, said the mayor has been misrepresenting what the case is about. The mayor is doing her best to sweep garbage off the sidewalks and get people the help that they need, but they don't want it. So there's that, right? San Francisco says it has enough shelter for everyone, but in fact, they never have enough shelter. And 80 to 90% of the days they don't, he said. But that doesn't, where I disagree there is, even if they had only 50%, that 50% isn't going to get used because people are going to refuse to go into shelters. That's the simple math, right? It doesn't matter how many housing units you have. It doesn't matter. These people aren't going. These people are not going. They're going to continue doing their illegal nonsense in the homeless encampments because that's where they can get away with it. And they know it. And that's why they don't want to be swept out. If there's a genuine health and safety matter going on, such as sidewalk access, then a camp should be able to be moved. But what's actually happening is people are being punished for the mere act of homelessness, not for any safety violation or any actual criminal violation. That is nonsense. If you go to any homeless encampment, invariably there are shenanigans going on left and right. Drug use, human trafficking, prostitution, stolen goods, you name it. You name it. We all know it. And then, when it comes down to these lawsuits, people want to say, well, this isn't really what we're doing. And this isn't what we're about. We've got a shortage of affordable housing, and until we get everybody the housing that we need. Nonsense. It's just sheer nonsense. But that's what these court cases are all about, right? It's one side trying to convince the other side. And in the meantime, when they tie the hands of the city's mayor, city isn't going to be able to do much. They're just going to be kind of hung out to dry, and they'll get their lawyer back on it. They'll get the right to do it again. I mean, they have to. They have to, because you can't have a city without sweeps, because that's how we got here, right? During the pandemic, we didn't do any sweeps and these encampments just exploded. So longtime anti-poverty advocate Paul Bowden said he was frustrated that the judge's order was even needed when several other rulings in recent years, including in Boise, Idaho and Los Angeles, have mandated the same types of restrictions. I think most cities have these restrictions. Hey, you got to offer them housing. Hey, you got to have housing for them to go to. The bottom line is they're not going. They don't want to go. That's not where the action is. That's not where they can keep up their addiction and all the other craziness that goes with that. So, identifying these things is great and all, but the reality of this is something wildly different that, the media just kind of picks little bits and pieces and doesn't really sit down and go, well, how did all these people become unhoused? If you started to look at those root causes, you would find drugs at the epicenter. I strongly believe that's what you would find. So there you go. So you can't fix this whole homeless thing without, addressing the drug addiction. And when you start going down the roads of addressing the drug addiction, that's a whole nother story, isn't it? That's a whole nother podcast. That is weeks of podcasts we could talk about, but not much is going to be done about that, is it? We're not going down that road yet. We'll see if we ever do. In the meantime, expect this stuff to keep going back and forth. All right, that's it for me. Thanks so much for being here. We'll catch up on the next one. Bye for now.